Can you tell us who you are again?
Oh, I'm Phoebe Spencer. I'm Ty J. Justice.
I'm Fernando.
Were you scared to walk to school during the time of Brown's school education? Or if you didn't ride or walk to school, did you ride a bus? Or how did you get to school?
No, I did not ride a bus. At that time, any students living in Crisfield and they were within walking distance of the school, we walked. The only students that were transported to schools were from Marion or Hopewell. And I'm sure that you're familiar with those two communities. And interesting enough, when I walked to school, there was not, if you know anything about the geography of Crisfield, there was not any housing built called Summers Cove Apartments. I walked across puppy holes, wetlands, all kinds of wild grasses, and I had to jump a ditch to get to school. And those who rode the bus, they rode from Merritt and from Hopewell and were dropped off. They were dropped off at Crisfield High School because we didn't have buses at that time for attendance. There were bus drivers, but I never rode the bus. There were private transporters like my father and a gentleman named Mr. James Thomas, and they had like station wagons. They would pick us up if it was snow weather, ice weather, or it was too bad for sending your children out, just too cold. We had little private taxi cab services.
So could you repeat that? I feel like they couldn't hear because all the noise.
Yeah, Phoebe asked me if I rode the bus to school and if I was afraid of walking when this decision, Brown versus the Board of Education, was made. No, I was not. I was never frightened of walking or riding to school, but I did not ride any buses to school because if the school was within walking distance, you walk to school. Young people now, they feel like they need to ride to school every day. We enjoyed walking to school. It was fun because we could cut up, we could stop and play games before we got to the school. So that was almost like a recess before we arrived at the school. And the other thing is, walking to school was not that hard. It was not that far. It was not like walking from Crisfield High School to maybe Fulton. It was not that far. It was very, very close. And it was fun walking to school every day, walking there and walking back. And like most students, we would do things that we shouldn't do. We would play around, and sometimes we would go up in people's yards and pull fruit off the trees when we weren't supposed to, and all kinds of things. But I enjoyed walking to school, and I walked most of the time. Even when I went to high school, Crisfield High School, I never rode the bus. I walked to Crisfield High School every day that I could. Spring, summer, winter, or fall. And I had friends that, I had a very close friend who also helped me during my years at Crisfield High School. His name was Reverend Robert Bess. And he was 1 year ahead of me, and we were very close friends, so we would walk to school together a lot.
Did anybody treat you differently if so?
No, they didn't treat me any different because some of the students, though we attended different high schools, one was the white high school and one was the black high school. I knew a lot of the white students before I arrived, and some of them knew a lot of the black students as well, because we lived in the same neighborhood and we worked in some of the same places. Our parents knew each other. There were some neighborhoods that were segregated, but for the most part, we would play together. We found opportunities where white students, black students could play together, or white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods met on equal turf. And we had games that we played together or we worked together. So it was not that much uneasiness with me attending Crisfield High School after attending an all-black high school. And I had friends already because of our neighborhood associations.
Was it just the school that changed and passed the law?
Our community changed because of Brown versus Board of Education. Governor J. Millard Charles, he was responsible for making some significant legislation to hurry up the integration process as a result of Brown versus the Board of Education. And during his tenure as governor of Maryland, he had some tough things to deal with, more than I had to deal with, because there was resistance from various quarters in the state to the integrations of the school. There were disagreements about how it was to be accomplished and what schools would be affected first, because we have urban centers like Baltimore, and we have 26 counties, and all of them were affected by the Brown versus the Board of Education decision in terms of bringing students together. So the governor had a tough time. He had to deal with demonstrations, he had to deal with folks coming to his office and writing letters to him about Brown versus the Board of Education and black students going to white high schools. Fernando, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I did. If you had a choice, if you got on the bus, how would it be? Like, do you guys have like certain places you could sit, or?
No, because we had segregated bus services. We had black bus drivers who transported black students, and we had white bus drivers that transported white students. That's how unfortunate our circumstances were because of segregation. And Brown versus the Board of Education was trying to eliminate that and try to prevent those sort of inequalities and those types of separations of young people who were just students. Because like I said, my orbit and my world was pretty small, because I could only understand what a child could at that age. But until I became older, in my teenage years, I understood the implications and ramifications of Brown versus the Board of Education, what it meant for me and all the people in this country in terms of acquiring an education that was based on the best quality books, the best quality teachers, and the best facilities.
Did any teachers give you a hard time during the learning process?
No, I didn't have any problems with my educators and teachers, even when I was at Carter G. Woodson Junior Senior High School or at Crisfield High School. They were all about educating me, and giving me the best, giving me the very best, and making sure that I mastered the content of the education that they were presenting, and made sure that my environment was conducive to learning. And I had a variety of teachers. Even during desegregation, there were black teachers that were transferring to all white high schools as well. It wasn't just students. And I had the privilege of having black and white teachers in a formal all white high school.
If you could go back in time, would you or what would you change about your behavior during the time, or would you react differently?
I would not change too many things, because the power to change rested in the hands of those that were older than I, and most of those were legislative and legal decisions that was affecting my life. What I had to adjust to was the opportunity or the freedoms that were released from those legislative and judicial decisions that were dictated by the law, namely Brown versus the Board of the Board of Education. And subsequently also what the governor of Maryland was deciding in the legislature in terms of pushing along this huge change and making it work for everybody, both in Maryland and across the nation. I just wanted to be a student. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to see what new things I could encounter.
Were people eager to be your friend or very hesitant?
Oh, I had tons of friends. I had a lot of encouragement, and I never felt in any way inferior, because I thought that the education that I received at Carter G. Woodson, when it was an all-black high school, prepared me to be a capable and active student no matter where I went. If it wasn't Crisfield High School, it might have been another high school in another state. I felt very comfortable and I felt very capable to handle the change. And I welcomed maybe the diversity was different, because for 16 years I had never attended nor sat in a classroom with a white student or any other student other than black people.
Have you ever heard any negative comments about how black kids are going to school with white kids, and if so,
Sure.
how did you feel?
Sure, I heard that. Let me share this with you. And this has never left me. In my junior year at Crisfield High School, and this did not happen in the high school, but it happened with some other students. During my junior year in high school, my best friend and one of my neighborhood buddies, Reverend Robert Best, his name was Robert Best, and he was a grade ahead of me. We had attended a basketball game, and you have to realize that sports were being integrated too, and that was not well received often. We attended a basketball game at Crisfield High School, and it was with a rival team. And if I'm not mistaken, it might have been Washington High School. It could have been Easton High School. And we thoroughly enjoyed the basketball game because we sat with our class and with our friends. But on our way back home, we were attacked by two senior high school students from Crisfield High School. And I know that they were seniors because they could drive. They were adults, really. And they chased us and ran us up on the porch on the street where Reverend Best lived. And they got out of the cars and chased us until we ran to this porch of a neighborhood adult and told them what was happening. And then they got in the cars and left. And we knew who they were, but we never mentioned it. Robert and I never talked about it. We never even told our parents about it. Actually, this is the first time I shared it with you. But that's a memory that stuck with me. But we never had those type of incidents. I did not, where people debased me or denigrated me for my color or from what high school that I came from prior to attending Crisfield High School.
So do you think the younger kids were willing to be a friend to a black person, or were they like just caught up with what people said about black people? Do you think they would be their friend if they didn't know nothing about the racism and things like that?
With all things that are new and different, like me, other students were uneasy and were uncertain about what really to do or how to react in a new educational setting. Because, as I said earlier, some of the white students I knew because we were in the same neighborhood. And that distinction between being black and white was not, it was kind of blurry because we worked, we played, and lived in some of the same neighborhoods. But we had never sat in the classrooms together. So they were uneasy or uncomfortable and wondering how they were going to behave. And I was wondering how I was going to react to how they behaved. But during the 2 years that I attended Crisfield High School, we eventually found out that we really weren't that much different as students, whether we were black or white. It was all about learning. It was all about respecting your teachers. It was all about enlarging your opportunity in that regard, we had more in common than differences.
Are you happy now that Black and white kids can go to school together as one and don't have to worry about racism? Well, we still worry about racism now, but as of today in this area, do you like how it is now?
I'm amazed at the diversity of student bodies across Somerset County in particularly, but across the nation, because as you well know, Brown versus the Board of Decision was a national legislation that changed the complexion of our entire country. And all kinds of students now are in our school settings, people of color, even some students that transfer from other nations and other countries you'll find in classroom because they are attracted to the quality of education of the United States. I don't recall having too much diversity when I was in high school or in junior high school and elementary. It was mostly Black and white students. The diversity was based more on probably religious affiliation, because we had students that had different religious preferences. They kind of stood out, but apart from the issue of color, it was more so Black and white students. We didn't have Latino students, we didn't have students from Haiti, we didn't have students from El Salvador, we didn't have students from Nicaragua. Now student bodies are amazingly diverse. And I applaud that, and I think Brown versus the Board of Decision was the genesis of all of that happening and what you enjoy today, both in a high school setting and eventually if you decide to attend a university or a college, you'll see the same diversity happening.
I think that might be all we need.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of